In Boker Tov, today's daf yomi is Makkos daf Chaf Beis, Makkos 22. We're going to start on the bottom of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, 4 lines before the lines get wide. Today's daf is dedicated for Shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. The Gemara tells us on the top of the page in the Mishnah, it said that you can make you can do one action with a plow one furrow, and be liable for 8 separate prohibitions. So the Gemara now says, well, maybe you should even be liable for more. It's possible that you could do even more than 8. If you're plowing, you're moving the seeds, and you're also being zoreh, you're also sowing the seeds on Yontif. Why aren't you liable for that as well? So that's what Ula asked Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman's answer to that is Amarle ton of Bashir. He said, no, the Tana wasn't being exact. He said 8, but it could have been more. So Amarle, Ula responds, Tana katani shmona v'at amris Tana v'shia. Tana said specifically there are 8, and you want to say Tana v'shir, and he said specifically that there are 8. Amarava yesh chiluk mulachos b'Shabbos. So Rava gives a different answer to Ula. Rava says, excuse me. Rava says that the idea that you could do one action and be liable for many prohibitions, many sin offerings, is something that we have on Shabbos. That's called the L'chalik. But on Yantif, we don't say that. And when Ula heard this, Amalei Adet he says, yes, that's the right answer. So the Abaye challenges Rava. Eisvei Abaye ve'en chiluk mulachos b'yamtiv means to say if you do with one action, you had many forgettings, many prohibitions. On Yantif, we say you're only liable for one set of lashes. We don't have chiluk mulachos on Yantif. V'hatanan, but then don't we have the following actually Bryce of Atanya. Let's say you take a gid anasha, which is the sciatic nerve of the animal that you're not allowed to eat, and you cook it in milk on yantif the and then you eat it. Loke chamesh, you're going to get 5 sets of lashes, and the Bryce enumerates them. Loke misham ochel gid, your lashes for eating the gid anasha. Veloke misham mivashal b'yantif, you're cooking on yantif not for the purposes of being able to eat, because since it is not something that is permitted to eat, therefore you're in violation of cooking. And also you're liable, mishum vashal gid b'chalav, you're liable for cooking meat and milk together. Mishum ochel basar chalav, you're liable for eating the meat and milk together. Mishum havar, and you're liable for making a fire. So we see that with this one action, you're liable for both cooking and also making a fire. And if you say that on Yontif, we're not mechalik, we're on top of 22a, then you should not be liable for havar on Yontif. Because you're already liable for the cooking. So the Gemara says, okay, from this brisa, afik havara, take out the fire. You're not liable for the fire, not liable for making the fire, but rather you're liable. You're liable for eating the ginanush of an animal that was not slaughtered properly, called a nevela. The Gemara says you can't do that. But Tani Rabbi Chia taught him about this brisa. So you're liable twice for eating and 3 for cooking the isa. And if you're going to say that you're liable for eating the ginanush of an nevela, it will be shoash al achila sohu chayev, that it would be 3 for eating that he's liable. So the Gemara says, okay, ela apik havara. So okay, take out the making the fire. You're not liable for that. V'ayel atze ashera, and you're liable for you used as the fuel the wood of an ashera tree, idolatrous tree. And the prohibition is from here, as it states, you're not allowed to have anything from this idolatry in your possession. And so therefore, by using this, you're in violation of that prohibition. So now we have another one you could have gotten from that action. You're not allowed to even bring it into your home. So therefore, that would be 6, and that's a problem. No, you cooked it with, you used as the fuel Shebishlu, that you were mavashel with the wood of hektish. So basically, there was that you had wood that had been consecrated to the temple, and you burned them as part of the fire, and that is prohibited. It says the prohibition from here, Vashrayhem tisrafun ba'esh, you shall burn their idolatries in fire. Lo tasun keinu Hashem lokechem. You shall not do this to Hashem your God. Okay, so now we're up to the next Siman Shanvai Shana. So Maskef of Rav Hoshaya. So we had said that if you could do one plowing and be liable for 8 prohibitions. So the Gemara is going to try and say how actually you could be even more than 8. Maskef or Rav Hoshaya v'lichshov nami hazareya ben nachal eitan. That there's something called a nachal eitan, which is a wadi, which you're never allowed to cultivate, because that's where you put the egla arufa in. That if there was a dead body found, that you take him to the nachal eitan and you take a calf to the nachal eitan and you kill the calf there as a way of atonement. So let's say you were doing the plowing in the nachal eitan, that should be a violation where you're liable for lashes. And the prohibition, the warning is from here, as it states about the nachal eitan, asher lo aved bo v'lo yizareya, that you are not allowed to work it and you are not allowed to plant anything. Asher lo aved bo v'lo yizareya, that you're not allowed to sow there forever. So I'm asking for Rav Chanina v'lochshav nami amochek es Hashem. So it's also possible that there was, while you were plowing, there was the name of God there, and you plowed over the name of God and erased it. You're not allowed to destroy the name of God. And another attempt. What about this? Is this week's parsha? You're not allowed to destroy. You're not allowed to cut off tzaras from your body. So let's say there was a tzaras that you were cutting while you were plowing. That you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to cut it off. And that Kohen Gadol wore the choshen on his breastplate, on his ephod. He wore the breastplate on his ephod. Let's say while you were plowing, you also knocked off the Kohen Gadol was there in his full garments, and you also knocked off the choshen from his ephod. And also, Vamasir by the Aron, you're not allowed to remove the poles from the Aron at any time. Let's say the Aron Kodesh was in the cemetery and you are removing the poles. So the Gemara says, also another possibility. Let's say you had properly, you took the wood of the Asherah and you built a plow with it. So maybe that's what's going on here. You know how to use it. Or another possibility is, let's say you cut down trees, that you know how to cut down fruit-bearing trees. You're not allowed to cut down a fruit-bearing tree. So Amar Rabbi Zeiro, Rabbi Money, Nami could go into Amar Shmua Shalo Echrosh B'Yom Tov. What about another possibility? What about the idea that let's say you took an oath and said, I take an oath that I'm not going to plow on Yom Tov, and now you went ahead and violated that oath. So the Gemara says, no, that one we can answer. That oath will not take effect because because you already had taken an oath that you're not going to work the land at Sinai. We all took that oath, and so therefore this oath doesn't apply. You can't make an oath against an oath that's already applicable. So I'm away. Yes, you could. He responds, says Rav Zeira. Could go on the Amar Shvuah Shelo Echrosh Bein L'Chol Ben Yom B'Yom Tov. Let's say you say, I take an oath that I will not plow during the week or on Yom Tov. Because since it applies to during the week, it will also apply on Yom Tov. The Gemara said, no. The answer to that is, the reason why we don't include that is something that you could annul, since you could go to a chacham and annul the oath. Therefore, the Mishnah wouldn't list that. The Gemara says, "V'harei The low vare hektish. What about the first case is in the Mishnahs where we say that you were plowing with an animal that was mukdash, that was consecrated. So that's something that you couldn't know. Gemara says no, but before we're talking about a firstborn animal which you can't know. That's why it was hektish. It was hektish from the womb. Vare nazir, we're talking about a person who's plowing in the cemetery who's a Nazirite, and that's something you vowed to take upon yourself. Gemara says no, but nazir shimshon. No, we're talking about a case where a person was a nazir from like Shimshon. Rivan says that he was a nazir from an angel. The angel told him to be a nazir, so that can't be annulled. So the Gemara says, well, nazir Shimshon baram mesim. Well, then he shouldn't be having a problem in violation of the prohibition of coming in contact with the dead, because Shimshon himself was able to come in contact with the dead, because we know he killed many people. So the Gemara says, Ella hi Tana Isser Kol. No, this Tana doesn't think that this oath ever applies to get a prohibition, because you're Mishpah Ummah Mar Sinai. He doesn't say, well, since you included it during the week, you can also include it on Yontif. He doesn't hold by what's called an Isser Kol. Amar Rabbi Shai, and now we have the next case. Amar Bia Shor Psuli Hamikdashim Lokesh Naim. So what's going on here? So the Rivan's explanation is that a person takes an ox which had been psuli hamikdashim, had been consecrated to the temple, and then it became disqualified because it has a blemish, and you redeemed it. Well, now you want to mate with that. That's going to be a problem, and the problem is because it has some of the qualities of chulin and some of the qualities of kodshim, because it's chulin, because you're allowed to eat it outside the temple, and it's kachim because you're still not allowed to work it. And so therefore, as a result of that, as a consequence, you're not allowed to mate it, even with another creature, because it's like klayim, because it's like you're doing the chulin with the kachim and the kachim with the chulin. And also with respect to leading it, having it lead something, even with a similar species with it, it's still going to be like klayim. That's how Rivan understands this. So he's going to get 2 sets of lashes. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Hamanig b'shor psuli hamikdash. So too with your manig, even if it just leads by itself, it's going to get lashes. Sharei guf echadu, because it's one body, v'aso akosov kishnei gufim, and the Torah makes it as though it's 2 bodies, because it's both chulin and hamikdash. And this is the way the Rivan explained their sugya. Bracha. No, I remember bracha. Now we're on the Mishnah at the bottom of 22a. Kama malkin osel boker tov. How many lashes do you give the person? We're in the Mishnah on the bottom of 22a. Tama Malkano. So how many lashes do you give him? Now we come to the very end of our track that we're talking about lashes, and as the Gemara usually does, it's only at the end does it explain what we typically in our minds today would explain at the beginning. So how many lashes do you give him? 40 minus 1. As it states in the pasuk states, "Vayam ben Makkos Rasha, v'pilu hashofet v'kanu lefanav kidei rishato b'mispar." You give him according to his wickedness by the number, and then the next pasuk says, "Arba'im yakenu, 40 you shall strike him." So we read it as b'mispar arba'im, meaning the number which is minyan shu samuch arba'im, a number which is close to 40. And the Gemara is going to explain how we have this drasha. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Arba'im Shlemos. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you give him 40 complete ones. Arba'im Shlemos Uloka. V'hechan Uloka. Where is he going to get these lashes? This 40th lash, as we'll see, the lashes need to be given in groups of 3. And so then we have 1 extra, because 13 times 3 is 39. So there's 1 remaining. So where does this 40th one go? Bein Keseifav. That goes between his shoulders. Ein omdino, so Ella the Makkos or Uyos l'shtalish. When we evaluate him to see how many lashes we get, we only evaluate them in groups of three. Means they can get how many groups of three? 5, 6 groups of three. Amdul Kabo Arba'im. Let's say they evaluate him that he can receive 40 lashes. The Laka Miktas, and he got a portion of them. And then afterwards, on top of 22b, and then after this fact, do She'in Yachol Kabel Arba'im. And then they evaluated that he cannot get the full set of lashes that they initially had evaluated him, Potter. They're going to be exempt from having received any more. Amdu L'Kabel Shmonasrei. Let's say they evaluate him that he can receive 18, i.e., 6 sets of 3. Mishalok, and once they started giving him lashes, Amdu Sheyachohu L'Kabel Arbam. They say, you know what? We changed our mind. We think he can get the full 40. At that point, he's still Potter. He's still exempt. My time, and what's the reason of the drasha that says b'mispar arba'im, that it means 39? Iksiv, so the Gemara explains, Iksiv arba'im b'mispar. If it would say 40 is the number, Havamina arba'im b'minyana, I would say it would be exactly 40. Hasha dichsiv b'mispar arba'im, now that it says in the number of 40, it's a minyan shu sokim es arba'im. It's a number that leads you up to 40, meaning to say that causes that afterwards you'll count to 40, and that is 39. I mean, that's the Gemara's explanation. Amarava kama tipshai shar inchi the kaime mikmei sefer Torah vol kaime mikmei gavarava. So we see that this explanation in Gemara is this tradition that even though the Torah says 40, we do 39. So this caused Rava to expound and exclaim, "Look how foolish are all these other people who they stand up before a Torah scroll." And they don't stand up before a gavaraba. Deal with sefer Torah ksiv arba'im. So the Torah scroll writes 40. The rabbis came away and they took away one. And we see that that's a gavaraba. It can even interpret the Torah in an authoritative manner. So if you stand up before a Torah scroll, you should for sure stand up before a Gavra Rabbah. The Gemara in Kedushin seems to suggest the opposite, that if you stand up before a great man, you should also stand up for sure before a Torah scroll. So we have this contradiction in between the Gemaras, and a lot of the commentaries focus on that. So now the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda says 40 complete ones. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, my time of Rabbi Yehuda. What's the explanation why Rabbi Yehuda says it should be 40 complete ones? Tilsiv, because it says in the pasuk in Zechariah, "Ma Makkos ha'ela ben yadecha." What are these Makkos between your hands? V'amar asher huketi beis me'avai, that I was struck from the house of Ma'avai. So the verse is referring to, at a simple level, the obvious level, on the day that Hashem will destroy the names of idolatry from the earth and the false prophets. And if he will be a false prophet, his father and his mother will strike him. And he will be embarrassed to say, and they'll be embarrassed to say that he was a false prophet. And they'll say he was a farmer. And if they'll ask him, what are these lashes that you're getting between your hands? That proves that he was a false prophet. He'll say, no, that I was just giving him blows in order to get him on the right path. But anyway, we see from here that it's between your hands, which is between the shoulders, and that's the 40th lash. So the Gemara says, the Rabbanim respond, no, that's not referring to when a court's giving him lashes. The verse from Zechariah is referring to, but Tinoka shall base Rabban who does it. That's just talking about basically a teacher smacking their kid, or in this case, the parents smacking their son who was a false prophet. Ein omdin ela b'makos haruyos. You only evaluate him by those lashes in groups of 3. So then the Mishnah said if they evaluate him to receive 40 and he got a portion, and then they evaluate him that he can't receive it anymore, he's completely exempt. So the Gemara analyzes this. Mean to say, laka in lo laka lo, that only once he started getting the lashes would be exempt from getting more. But if he didn't get any lashes, he wouldn't be exempt. He'll get the lesser number. Veraminu, I'm dual kabel arbam, but we have a contradictory brisa which says if they evaluate him to receive 40, and then they go back and they evaluate him that he cannot receive 40, but he's exempt. So and if they went and if they evaluated him that he could receive 18, and then he went back and they evaluated him that he could receive 40, he's exempt, and he only accepts. He's exempt from receiving all 40, but he still receives 18. So we see from here that even if he didn't get any of the lashes, he's exempted from the first more severe evaluation because of the second one that's left. And from the second evaluation, he's going to be exempted from the first one, which is more lenient. So Amar Sheshes Lokasha, it depends on the evaluation. It depends if the evaluation happened that exact day or if the evaluation happened for striking several days down the road or one or more days down the road. And if they evaluate him that same day to receive 40 lashes, and then they evaluate him a second time that he can't receive anything, it's for sure the case that the first evaluation was a mistake because his condition obviously hasn't changed. And so therefore the first evaluation is not considered an evaluation. And so therefore we wait for him to get better and we give him a new evaluation. But if he had received a portion of the lashes at that point, he's going to be exempt because he already got a portion. And the second case is talking about a case if at the beginning they evaluated him for 18, and that same day they recanted and they say that he could receive 40, that it's clear that the first evaluation was nothing. And so therefore, even if he got all the if he got all the lashes, it's going to be, we're not going to go back and give him more. He's going to be exempt. But if he didn't take any evaluations, then we continue to get him. But the Bryce is talking about where we evaluate him for down the road. They evaluate him today about tomorrow's lashes. And so therefore, when they came to give him the lashes, they saw that the situation changed. And then, so therefore, they say the first evaluation was not a mistake, but now his situation has changed. And so therefore, if they evaluated him initially for 40, in the end, they said that he can't receive it, he's going to be exempt from getting lashes because he was already embarrassed. But if they evaluate him initially for 18 and then the end 40, he doesn't get, he only gets according to the 18 because that was a very good evaluation. Now we come up to the next Mishnah. Avar Avera Sheish Bashnei Lav. And let's say he violated a sin that has two prohibitions. Amdu Omeid Echad. You give him one evaluation, and if they gave him one evaluation for the two prohibitions, and they found out that he could receive more than one prohibition, Loke is going to get the full double lashes. Then Upater, and we no longer bring him back to evaluate him again. But if they didn't evaluate him for two, they only evaluated him for one, Loke. Then we give him the lashes for one, Misrape, the Chose of Loke. And then he gets healed, then we go back and give him a second set of lashes. Gemara says, is that really the case? But we have a price that says we don't give him one evaluation for two prohibitions. The price that says we don't evaluate him for two prohibitions, talking about a case where together they evaluate him, then he can receive 41 lashes. And so therefore, we count 39, and then the other leaves us 2. And since we don't give lashes of 2, and therefore, we only give him the first one and not the second one. And then we wait until he gets better, and then we evaluate the second one. But where we have the Mishnah is referring to a case, Adam Dula, so since 42 is one from the first set, one complete set from the first prohibition, and 3 lashes from the second, that will work. And then he's done from getting lashes. So now we're up to the Mishnah on the stock. Kate and Malkin or so. How do we give him these lashes? Kofeit shtei yadav ala amud. We tie his 2 hands on a pillar, hilach v'hilach in each direction. V'chazana knesses, and basically the head of the assembly, ochez b'bigadav. He grabs hold of his garments. They tear his garments. And he's basically exposing his chest. There's a big stone behind him. Chazana knesses omedo, the head of the court stands on the stone. He takes calf hide strap, and he doubles it over. When does 1 into 2 and then 2 into 4. And then we have two straps of a donkey that are going out from this calf strap. It's 1 tefach long and 1 tefach wide. Verosha magas alpi kreso, and the heads of each of these tips will reach its belly. Makkos so shlushmin ofanav v'shtei yados mi'lachrav. And you strike him, and they strike him. 1/3 of the lashes in front and 2/3 behind him. And when you strike him, he's not sitting or standing on mota. He's leaning, as it says, v'piu hashofet. Ma'amaka biyado achas b'kol kocho. And the one who strikes him holds the whip in one hand, and he strikes him with all his strength. And while he's doing this, somebody is reciting the verses about kore, kore. And the person who's there reading the verses reads, Im lo tishmor la'asos. If you don't guard the commandments, Makkos, and then it says that God will present upon you many lashes. And then you go back to the beginning of the verses, and you read Ushmartem es divrei bris azos, and then you say you should guard this commandment, and then v'chosem, and you conclude with the verse that he's achieved atonement. And this is how, by the way, stay in passing, this is how the custom began to recite v'hurachom before we daven Marav, because the custom used to be that you gave the lashes, and then everybody went into daven Marav together. So he will achieve atonement. And then you go back to the beginning of the verses until he concludes all of his lashes. Let's say the person who's getting the lashes dies, potter. Then we're going to say that the one who struck him is exempt from going into exile because he's completely innocent. And so therefore the court appointed whipper is not going to exile. But Hosifo owed Ritua Achas Mace. He added on one extra whip, and the guy died. Then he goes into exile. Niskalkel, let's say Niskalkel Bain Barei Baimim. Let's say the person who's being whipped has an accident, whether it's feces or urine, potter. So then the lashes get canceled. At that point, he's exempt, because since he already became embarrassed, as it states, he became embarrassed. Therefore, we do not continue, and he's done. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ha'ishberei. No, the man will only be embarrassed if he has the feces accident ma'isha, but mayim, whereas the woman is embarrassed if she has the urine, and then it'll be exempt. Okay, this is today's daf. We'll stop here, and we'll continue at 8 a.m. Mishikoyach.